Story number one. Democracy is supposed to be messy. It's supposed to be chaotic. So why don't we nominate Donald Trump for Speaker of the House? As we speak, Kevin McCarthy, the would-be Republican Majority Leader, Speaker of the House, has just failed his 9th attempt at a vote to acquire a majority of Congress to place him, well, symbolically, into the office of the Speaker. Because, literally, he's already moved into the office of the Speaker. Kevin McCarthy is failing. He just doesn't have the votes. He can't get the majority needed. That is because approximately 20 to 21 Republicans have held out their support. Of course, every Democrat is voting for Hakeem Jeffries so far. There are some news reports that suggest Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans could be looking for moderate Democrats to help push him over the border, over the threshold of a majority, which would require concessions, which would require some version of almost like a UK parliamentarian coalition government. Because Kevin McCarthy can't get these 20 Republicans to budge in giving him their support. He's made almost every concession that you can imagine, including that one member of the House could bring a motion forward for the Speaker to vacate the office. I was on Varney and Company a little bit earlier this week on Fox Business, and Stuart Varney, a very good friend of mine and a very smart commentator and host, asked me a question that I thought was somewhat illustrative of the way we're beginning to talk about what's happening in the House. He asked me very specifically, hey, Will, in these kind of conditions and with these concessions and with the holdout of the minority, isn't it hard to, quote, control Congress? Isn't this blackmail of the majority by the minority? And I said to Stuart the following: I don't have a problem with what's happening in the House. And I focused, I told Stuart, on one particular word that you chose to use, and whether or not it was meant in this way. Here's the way it was taken. The House is not meant to be controlled. I listened to everybody who is currently describing the Republican failure to elect Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House on 9 separate tries as a clown show, saying things like, get on the team. Ari Fleischer on Fox News said, almost a direct quote, get on the team. You hear people talking about how bad this is for Republicans. How do you get something done? How do you preserve order? Get in line. And all of these sentiments, to me, are the antithesis of governance. Now, I will grant you that, well, nothing like this has happened in 100 years. And I will grant you that for the better part of a century, this has been our vision of governance. 2 teams, partisan politics. R's and D's, red and blue. Elephants and donkeys, Republicans and Democrats. And it has been a sport with wins and losses. Zero-sum game. Get on the team. But that's not really how either the American form of governance was envisioned by the founders, nor what is reflective of what is happening in America in 2023. You see, right now, I think, and as we have talked about on several occasions, the American electorate is completely scrambled. In my lifetime, I have never seen the 2 political parties represent less or be more out of touch with the American populace than are Democrats and Republicans today. This isn't the political parties of my childhood or the Republicans and Democrats of your father. This isn't simply partisan battles over tax policy or the pretense of an argument over the size of government. No, in 2023, we're fresh coming off of several years of debating of whether or not I should have to get an experimental drug injected into my system in order to enter an Applebee's. In 2023, we are having conversations about whether or not the government should be intimately involved in censoring Americans who somehow fall out of line of the groupthink. Any black sheep, make sure they're cut out of the herd. In 2023, we're having debates about so many aspects of American everyday life. Should we or should we not be allowed to operate our businesses openly? Should we or should we not be allowed to breathe freely or required to cover our face? That simply do not fit into traditional concepts of partisan politics, simply do not fit into the ideologies of previous versions of Democrats or Republicans. And in that world, I'm okay with a little chaos. I'm okay trying to figure out who stands for what. I'm okay with democracy. It really is interesting that so many people who proclaim to believe in democracy really don't like, in fact, recoil, in fact, cast condescension down their nose at witnessing democracy. This is what we're witnessing in the House of Representatives. It seems what they want is not a government that's reflective of the passions of the people, but a government that, quote unquote, works. That we have order. That we have the maintenance of the machine. This was the intention of the House of Representatives. If I am right, and if the ideologies of 2023, the issues facing the American people, are not reflected in the attitudes of the government, then the government needs new voices. If the politics of yesterday don't reflect the issues of today, then why do I want status quo? Why should we just accept the machine? The founders envisioned the House of Representatives as a reflection of the passions of the people, the passion of Americans. That's why they're elected every 2 years. They're the most responsive to the everyday attitudes of Americans. If you don't reflect your voting base, you're gone shortly. The Senate is the proverbial cooling saucer of democracy. Senators are elected on 6-year cycles, 6-year terms, and they are less, by design, less responsive to the short-term attitudes of Americans. It's a senator's job to think more long-term. It's a senator's job to, quite honestly, be more focused on principle. It's a senator's job to have a set of beliefs that he might believe is aligned with his constituency over a longer period of time. It's the job of a congressman to immediately represent the voice of his constituents, of the people who live in his district in America. A congressman is not there to represent the desires of 330 million people. A congressman is not there to represent an entire state. That's the job of a senator. 330 million people, that's the job of a president. A congressman is there to represent the attitudes of the people in his district at that given moment in time. And I will tell you, if 20 congressmen represent 10% of the Republican constituency, that's a gratuitous measurement of the popularity of Kevin McCarthy, meaning that 90% of the American Republican voting base has a favorable view of Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy represents status quo. Kevin McCarthy represents the machine. Kevin McCarthy honestly represents yesterday. And you can look at any approval poll. You can look at any, they're everywhere out there, and you can see how popular is Kevin McCarthy. Those 20 may not have a great plan for what comes next. Those 20, maybe some of them, as accused, are doing this for personal gain. I don't know. All I know is I will estimate that there are more than 20 who, if they were responsive to the passions of the people in their district, would be looking for new leadership for Republicans. Maybe it will be Kevin McCarthy that gets the votes, that has the consensus, that ultimately brings together Republicans. But maybe it will require someone else. And if those 20, or if those 220 are wrong, if it truly gets in the way of good governance, if it truly gets in the way of getting the work done of the people, or if it once again places into leadership a status quo that doesn't reflect the attitudes and the passions of the American people, then the people will have their say shortly. This is the design by the founders of the House of Representatives. Alternatives to Kevin McCarthy have included, for example, Congressman Byron Donalds, friend of the Will Cain podcast, who's been right here on this program. You should go back and find that episode of the Will Cain podcast. He has a fascinating life story. We didn't avoid any of it. People have pointed out some of his past legal trouble. I talked to him about that right here on the Will Cain podcast, and he addressed that directly. I suggest you go check out that episode. It's fascinating on race. It's fascinating on conservatism. It's fascinating on the Dallas Cowboys, for whom he's a fan. America's team. By the way, Cori Bush, Congresswoman from Missouri, black. It's important because to this next point to be made, I didn't clarify, Byron Donalds also black. Cori Bush tweeted the following about Byron Donalds' nomination as Speaker of the House. She said, for what it's worth, Byron Donalds is not a historic candidate for Speaker. He is a prop. Despite being black, he supports a policy agenda intent on upholding and perpetuating white supremacy. His name being in the mix is not progress. It's pathetic. I don't know if Cori Bush is a racist. All I know is that is racist. To deny any human being the ability to be an individual, to deny them the independence of thought, to assign for them from the outside and require of them a certain set of thoughts based upon the color of their skin, in my estimation, is no better definition of racism. In the 1960s, there was a civil rights sign, I am a man. I love that sign. I think it says so much philosophically about the aspirations of the United States of America. I am a man. That sign suggests I'm an individual. I have dignity as a singular individual in this society. I have independence. I have thought. I have love. I have faith. I have value. Cori Bush robs Byron Donalds of all of that. She robs him of being a man because he's dared to be independent. Again, I don't know about Cori Bush's character. I can guess. But I have no problem saying that statement right there is the definition of racism. Byron Donalds has been nominated as Speaker of the House. Congressman Matt Gaetz nominated Donald Trump as Speaker of the House. You don't have to be a sitting congressman or congresswoman to be Speaker of the House. Anyone can. So I say embrace the chaos. Enjoy democracy. Hell, go for an 11th vote. Represent the passions of the people. Maybe you'll find a consensus. At some point, you will find a leader. It will not be a Democrat. And you can then move forward with governance in the United States of America, having paid greater attention to the passions of the people of America. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.